Let me see. Perfect. Thanks, Jane. All right, so this is our steering committee meeting on March 25th. I can't believe March is almost over. We have an agenda. I'll throw it back in the chat here. One sec. Oops, I just threw March 11th in there. Ignore what I just put in there. Sorry about that. We do have an agenda though. It's coming. Thanks, Jane. Okay, great. And and the materials are all there as well. I'm happy to walk through this. Secretary Clauser, anything you want to say before we walk through this agenda and get going?
Nope, I think I'm all set. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, so two things we're trying to do, or really three. One is to go over that guidance document that we looked at during the council meeting last week, and then we looked at the previous week. So this is round 3 for you all. It's posted in track change, so you can see how we tried to incorporate comments from the council meeting. So let's go over that. And there's at least 2 little tidbits in there that I definitely need to talk with you all about, and whatever else you all want to talk about. The second thing we're going to do is think about what you want to be doing in the coming months. The next actual council meeting isn't until June, and it seems like there's a lot going on. So how do you want to prioritize your time as a steering committee over the next couple months? And then finally, there's some updates on the subcommittee membership, the last pieces that we talked about last time. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to do this in an hour, public comment at the end. Hey, Secretary Moore, good to see you. And so that's our agenda. Any quick comments, questions on the agenda before we dive into it? Looking good? Okay, great. So approval of minutes. Anybody need a moment to click through here? Any concerns about minutes?
They look good, thanks.
Excellent. Well, hearing no requests to have more time and no concerns, let's consider those minutes approved. All right, so let's jump into this doc. And again, this went out on Friday, so apologies that you probably didn't have much time to look at it. Oh, this is in Word. Oh, fantastic. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing if I already did. There we go. So I'm half tempted to give you all just a moment to read. Would anybody appreciate that? Just a moment to read. Okay. So if you click on the link there, it will download a Word version, and in that Word version, you can see the track change. I will share my screen with it for those of you who are having any kind of issues. Maybe you're on the road and it's harder to do this. I'm just going to go scroll through so you can see the changes. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to narrate these changes as we go. Sorry, because I'll give an explanation of what we heard and why we did it. So we heard an interest in mentioning the community outreach and stakeholder outreach high up in the document, and so we added a line in there high up in the document. We heard the issue of being even more explicit about cross-cutting issues and naming those, and so we did that higher up. We heard about the importance for subcommittees of reviewing key scientific inputs. And so we named that higher up in the document. And and this is something that Jane put in. We heard about this, excuse me, importance of making a nod to the fact that the council is offering up some preliminary priorities in this very document. Okay, let me just scroll down as we go through. there was a question about the nature of the participation of just transition liaisons. We clarified that. The importance of collaborating with subcommittees in that technical information. There's a paragraph here about the kind of support that will be available for subcommittees in the council. And so we wrote a paragraph about that. And we can look in detail at this paragraph. I'll give you a second to read it. Okay, so there's that paragraph. We can talk about that.
David,
Yeah.
or are we doing this as we go, or are we gonna go through the whole?
I think
thing
I'm gonna go
first?
through the whole thing, but can you make
Okay.
a note of it real quick and we'll circle back, if that's all right?
I'm just not sure subcommittee's results is the right way to,
Where does it say
Yeah.
that?
it's nope, it's the fifth line down on that page. Take the lead in drafting the subcommittee's results.
Oh, I see. Recommendations is the right word. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
That's that word. So then we added, here, let me get rid of this. We added some more clarity about what comes next in terms of guidance, because we recognize this 4-page document is a starting place, not an ending place in terms of guidance. So we named 2 things here. I'll let you read.
The public engagement piece, David, I think we should discuss further, because that's a place where there will be significant staff support. And I
Mhm.
know that was something that had come up in the council meeting.
Great. Okay, a few other things that got put in here based on council input. Another mention of cross-cutting issues here. Paula made a bunch of edits around sort of weaving equity more tightly into the detail of the content here. I have some X's in here because I just didn't have that in my fingertips about what the new technical analysis is, and we didn't get it in there before posting.
Hey,
and I'll
David,
yeah.
I'm sure that there's going to be additional pieces to put there, but one thing that I think we could add right now would be, I see the business as usual analysis as just one component of the updated pathways analysis. I think we want to say benefit from a updated pathways analysis, including
Yep. This is going to be tricky to do this real-time edit, but
I'm sure there's more, and I can think about it and send some suggested language, but that immediately came to mind.
Thank you. That's exactly the kind of thing we need here. Okay. And then rural resilience, adaptation, some edits that counselors recommended, excuse me, in real time. I don't know what's going on in my throat today. And a mention of the related process of the resilience implementation strategy. It was asked that was put in here. And then in ag and ecosystems, there was some language suggested that we give a little bit more flavor to what these goals were. So we added that suggested language in, and added, we'll go to 4, added a 4th bucket of food security. It was suggested by Billy and others. And just some additional language edits that were requested by counselors, or at least one counselor. So that's what we got. So those are the edits in here. As we start to talk, let me just flag two things. One is what Jared jumped on, which is these X's here if we need to do more. The other is something that Leslie Ann sent that I wanted to share directly with you all to figure out how we may get that in here. Leslie Ann had a vision of sort of broader umbrellas to put into this document, and that document is let me just share my screen. It's an image that she has shared with others, including the White House, and I just struggled to figure out how to translate it into the text that we put in this document. And so I wanted to share it with all of you to see if you have some thoughts about if this is already woven in or if there's more we can do to weave this sort of bigger umbrella that Leslie Ann offered as an input. So that's linked in the meeting materials, so you can have that on your own screen if you want to. I just want to make sure you took a look at it and consider whether we could do a better job of putting this kind of thinking into our document. Okay. All right, so I will stop the run through and then welcome reactions, friendly amendments. We can do some edits in real time. I'll try to do it in the document. If I can't, if I'm not fast enough to do it in the document, I'll take notes and fix it after this call. Reactions, thoughts, improvements. Did we capture what the council said on Monday? Graham?
The one thing that I have a question about is the section that was added to suggest that we balance kind of general principles with specific actions in a way
Yes.
that provides enough detail, but not too much detail. And I just wonder if we don't provide every last bit of detail we can, what is the group farther along in the process of turning this into reality who will have a more specific mandate and more expertise and more access to scientific resources than the subcommittees have assembled. Who will do it if we don't, I guess, is the question. And is it more appropriate for whoever might do it if we don't provide that level of detail than the subcommittee and the council as a whole?
Yeah. I welcome a conversation amongst you all about that. And I think what I was sensing on Monday last week with the council was it was unresolved in the council, the answer to that question of what is the right level of detail. I heard different views about that. And so I put it in there in part to reflect that the council and you all as a steering committee probably need to refine that a little bit better and then share it out to the subcommittees in the coming months. Once you as a full council feel like you're able to answer those questions. Kelly?
I have a feeling that it will depend on the different things that we're putting in the revised plan. Some things probably are much more developed and we can be a little bit more specific, and then some other projects may be more in their natal phase. And the other thing that I think will influence what the best level of detail is who the next person, as Graham said, the next person is, or the next group is that's going to do this, the next steps. And it could depend a lot on what kind of action it is. It could be the legislature, it could be state agencies. So I think that also, taking that into account, knowing who would be the next in the line and what resources they have will also affect what what level of detail is appropriate.
Yeah. Thanks, Kelly. Jared?
Thanks, David. Yeah, I agree with both Bram and Kelly on this. I think that overall, there's been a lot of, I think, very fair criticism of plans in the climate action planning space that are very high level and kind of strategic in orientation without the necessary specificity and detailed recommendations to actually be implemented. So when and where there is the ability to be specific, I think that that makes a lot of sense given the obligations and goals that the council was charged with in the Solutions Act. So fully recognize that it may vary kind of section by section or recommendation by recommendation, but I just want to say I very much agree that there are certainly some recommendations that deserve to be and really warrant being very specific in what they are, who would be implementing them, and how they would be implemented on what timeline.
Thanks, Jared. Julie?
I think it's when we get to the how that I have some real concerns over whether that is the role of the Climate Council. As a person who works at an agency responsible for operationalizing a lot of this, I think it ends up there are, I guess I should say, there are constraints that are inherent to state government. And to the extent we're provided with direction that doesn't match with sort of our statutory authorities and obligations, it puts us in a really tough spot. And I think, providing the what and the why is appropriate for the council, but when it gets into sort of operationalizing the how, I have real concerns that Bram indicated we have considerable expertise on the council and the subcommittees and want to take full advantage of that expertise. But we also have considerable expertise within the agencies of state government and need to have some ability to allow them to do their work. And it is a balance we're going to have to find, but I worry, I think it's a delicate balance.
Okay. David, I see your hands up. If folks are okay, I'll grab David's hand. Go ahead, David.
This goes to the immediate past discussion about assignments for the agencies, which is where the paid personnel is located, and the question about the detail in writing that came up earlier. I believe Jared brought it up and how important that is. And it goes to the support from staff and consultants portion of the document. And based on a comment that Secretary Moore made last time, that there are limits to what we can expect from the administration, whether it's the Climate Office or the Agency of Natural Resources in general, it brings up the question that I asked that brought that response. Can we ask the professional staff from the agencies on the committees to do work as a committee, that they are the people who do the writing, do the logistics, do the copying, distribution, schedule meetings, et cetera. Some of that is addressed in that paragraph, but some isn't, because we, and I think the answer to this question, and I'm not looking for an answer now, sort of sets up the problem. We, the biomass subcommittee, spent a great deal of time redoing a report which in fact set out a number of studies that would be necessary to complete prior to actually reaching a public policy decision. The fact is, based on the Secretary's discussion last time, I'm not sure that resources exist within the Climate Office or the agency to be able to do that work. And that's not a pejorative comment. I'm not being critical. I understand limits. I understand limits to government, lived with it most of my life. But it does bring up an issue of, should we have spent that amount of time dealing with the biomass issue when in fact we were not going or not have the capacity to follow through? And I think it's a question that the steering committee in particular should take up and provide guidance to the subcommittees, because that will constrain, define, focus the work of the committees. When we understand what our actual limits are in terms of the professional staff appointed to the committees, the staff in the climate office, and any additional assistance that any of the secretaries or participants from state government can make available to the effort.
Okay.
And I don't think that paragraph covers that.
Okay. Thanks, David. So there's a couple things in play now. One is how we're feeling about the way the bullet point that talks about the further guidance around striking the balance, how we feel about that, the way it's written now, and David's point of, is there enough specificity in the preceding paragraph about the level of state support? And indeed, those things are tied together in terms of the amount of effort that we're going to be asking of subcommittees and their ability to produce detailed information. So let me pull it back to this document. Are there changes you'd like to see, steering committee, in this document based on the conversation we're having right now? Would you express it differently?
Are you able to put it back up on the screen? It just
Absolutely. Yep.
Sorry, if everybody else has it, I apologize.
No. So this is the bullet where we talk about additional guidance that will be coming, and we talk about the prioritization process and incorporating equity into this. And as part of that bullet, we say, you know, expect more guidance about the level of detail we're actually asking for.
And my comments go to the paragraph headed
up ahead.
support from staff and consultants.
Totally. Yeah. So there's this paragraph up here too. So I'm happy to, you tell me where to go in the document, Julie, what you'd like to look at.
No, that was helpful. I just wanted to refresh on those paragraphs. Thank you.
Okay. Are there changes? Well, I have your mic's open, Secretary Moore. Are there changes you would suggest to the way this is phrased in this document right now, either this part or the part above? And I'm happy
No,
to.
I think both of those sort of are consistent with my understanding. I would only offer to, in response to David's comments, if these reflect, I think with the exception of more information on the public engagement plan, the resources the agency currently has available. And if the council is looking to be staffed or have other resources available to them, those need to go to the legislature. Like I don't have capacity to direct people to do this work at the expense of the other work that's on their plate that frankly is being responsive to other mandates. And so I just, that there isn't more capacity to be had that doesn't come at the expense of other work.
Thanks.
If I could, David, just quickly.
Well, I want to.
I don't care what the level of support is. I am saying that an all-volunteer committee should know what the quantifiable limits are going into taking on a work task.
Yep. Thanks, David. Kelly?
Looking at what we're seeing on the screen right now, I wonder, the word shouldn't on a high-level policy document that shouldn't get into implementation details seems like it's a little bit stronger of a judgment than I heard at this conversation and at the climate council meeting. So possibly, I don't even know, maybe it's just saying that striking the balance between a high level policy document that doesn't get into or doesn't always get into implementation details, something just to not be as specific about whether we should or shouldn't.
Got
And
it.
one other thing I wanted to mention, and I think this goes back to like not doing the work. Well, yes, it ties in with everything we were saying last time when we were doing the first climate action plan. One of the things that I thought was really valuable that a number of different people who work for the state brought forward, and Secretary Moore was probably one of the ones who was doing it a lot, which was super helpful, was saying, actually, this thing you're saying that we should do is something we are not allowed to do. And so having the state staff give guidance on what they're allowed to do, what they have the capacity for as we go through this process, I think will also be just really helpful. So we don't end up writing a thing that says you have to do this, and then they're like, we literally can't, or this contradicts something else that we have to do, and we're in a catch-22.
Thanks, Kelly. And on that last point, it's part of the reasons of saying up here that the climate action office has staff members participating in each subcommittee. That's part of it, right? It's sort of making sure there's eyes all over there and that kind of input. And Kelly, if you'd like to see other language, just let me know on that last point.
Can I just tag
Yeah.
in there, because I'm going to have to drop off, which is I think what you just highlighted there, David, is very important. Participating in each subcommittee, but not staffing or providing a higher level of service. Certainly relevant expertise, some of the feedback Kelly just described, which I agree is essential, making clear what state government already does or doesn't have the authority to do. But it really is sort of being a member of those subcommittees and not leading or staffing or something that would connotate a higher level of effort than is being sought from all of the other subcommittee members.
All right. Thanks, Julie. Bram, go ahead, please.
I think on the level of detail and specificity, one of and I think Secretary Moore's delineation of why and what, but not how, is helpful here, because someone said, and it didn't make it into this document, but it concerned me that, hey, we should be doing the pathways and the strategies, but we maybe shouldn't be doing the actions. And I think, if we make explicit here that the actions are sort of the what, if we make it clear that the subcommittee's task is to define the actions, but not to try to prescribe the implementation plan for those, maybe everyone will be happy.
Right. And so again, I'd welcome language suggestions here. I think that Bram, as you're describing it, like that was definitely what was in my head in trying to do like striking a balance between policy that doesn't get into implementation while still enough detail. Maybe the word action isn't in there. So I'd welcome thoughts about how to signal that. I don't think it's fully resolved in the full council based on what I heard on Monday. Like there's definitely different views. So, and this is something where you all maybe could, not today, but have a dedicated conversation about this as a steering committee and see if you can really do the double click. That's why it's a bullet of like, this requires additional guidance. Jared?
Yeah, no, I appreciate and agree with what Kelly and Bram said, and I just had a specific language suggestion that might get us a little bit closer, which is just to add the word all. So making clear that we're not so it would say doesn't get into all implementation details while still providing enough detail to give confidence, etc.
Okay.
Because
And
there are some
still on, she
actions.
might push back against that. So I'm a little worried about adding that word in there, but I'll do it.
I like the word appropriate better.
Okay. It's a
Give the
challenge.
secretary a little flexibility.
I think it works, but there are some implementation details in terms of, who the recommendation is directed toward, or on what timeline it would need to happen to be able to meet a statutory obligation. So I'm really wary of not signaling that it is appropriate for some level of implementation guidance to be included in the plan, again, as it was in the first one. So I would rather keep my recommendation as it was, because I think it suggests that there are a number of implementation details that would not be in the recommendation, that would be implemented by, or that would be the purview of the implementing agency or department or relevant body. So I think that works.
The reason, Jared, I'm hesitant, it was because we're talking about a balance, and I'm trying to articulate both sides of that balance, right? One side of that balance is, this is a policy document. It should not be about the how, the implementation, right? As expressed by Secretary Moore before she dropped off. And the other side of that balance is we need to have enough detail so that we know we're doing what we've been legally asked to do. So that's why I'm trying to not bleed those two concepts together, and why I'm a little hesitant with the suggested word. But I appreciate you trying to articulate what you're trying to articulate. Kelly?
I personally like it there, and I don't think it I think it's it leaves some wiggle room either way. And sort of what I was getting at with the state staff being able to provide guidance, they can, if there's enough confidence that we know a really good way of how this should be implemented, and we've vetted it with the state agencies and they say yes, but why can't we put that in the plan if everyone's happy with it? If there's a lot of questions still left unresolved, then we don't put this stuff in, we don't put the detail in. And so I think there definitely are areas where we could put a higher level of implementation detail, and there are areas where we really shouldn't. And so I think this does get at that with that word all in there personally.
Okay. Secretary Clauser, you had your hand up for a second. Do you want to jump in on this?
Sure. I had my hand up and then you said what I was going to say, David, which is, I think this is comparing and contrasting. And so the whole sentence, I think it takes away the meaning of the sentence if you add the word all while trying hard not to quibble over one word, especially in a sentence that's indicating we're giving further guidance. So feeling like we should save all that wordsmithing for the further guidance, and that the sentence without the word all communicates what we're talking about, which is illustrating that on the one hand, the policy document may not provide implementation details while providing enough detail. So I would suggest we do not add this sentence and focus our efforts on what the actual guidance document will be when we draft it.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Kristen. Bram, any elegant solutions to this?
Yes, with apologies to Secretary Clauser for doing the exact opposite of what she just recommended. I did throw a suggested sentence in the chat, which says the subcommittees do pathway strategies and actions and balance guidance on implementation with the administration and the legislature's need for leeway to carry out their duties and to optimize implementation. So
I'm just looking at your chat right now. Okay. Subcommittee responsible done by the high level path. How do folks feel about that? I'm more than happy to just cut and paste that version of the sentence in, but I'd want to sense that there's a general feeling of support for what Bram just dropped in the chat. Kelly?
I think if we do that, we would say maybe the subcommittees and the council, not just only,
Yeah.
it's not just the subcommittee's responsibility. I also had a suggestion. It's not an elegant one, maybe more of a blunt one, but just delete everything after the word strive for, and we can hammer this out later when we have more time and we have Secretary Moore here as well.
Right, more detail on the president and doesn't refer what level of details should strive for, period. Right. Right. Just get rid of that. And then we'll write it the way we want to write it. Yeah, we have our notes about it. We know what the tension is. And we're trying to nail that language. How do people feel about that? Less is more generally in these situations. Yeah,
That's-
Liz? Yeah.
That's fine with me.
Okay, we have our notes. It's not like we're losing the concept. We're just recognizing it's easier to do less is more at this moment. And let's have a proper conversation where we can be all the nuance we want to be on this.
Yeah, that works for me, especially because, and I apologize that I don't think there's a way to reflect this in language, but it may be that different subcommittees are at different levels of detail in their recommendations, or that different recommendations are at different level of detail. So it feels a little bit odd to have kind of a blanket guidance, articulating a certain level of detail when it may vary based on the subcommittee and the recommendation at hand.
Okay, I say let's find a time to play this out as a steering committee and try to have the conversation, right? And do it in that level of detail, imagining putting ourselves into those subcommittee shoes. Okay, great. Anything else we want to do up in here? I know this was a topic of conversation. Steering committee members, anything we want to do to further reflect council issues here? Okay. So the two things that I mentioned that I'm really interested in a quick conversation. One, we've started, and maybe this is maybe I don't need to put more here. Maybe less is more here, as well as other technical studies. Does somebody have something they want to put right in there? Or maybe
Well, David, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I can never tell when I'm on computer audio. Sorry. So we have a list of the proposed technical studies that we are planning to do that was shared with the council in January. So we should just add in the specifics there. I think they're a little bit broad in nature still, meaning like they're like Jared, when you're talking about the business as usual, there were also like supplemental components around building assumptions correctly for pathways and stuff. So like we can put some broad, but we have bucketed all of that money already, and so we can put that in there right there.
Perfect.
That sounds great, Jane. And that's what I was trying to get at with the updated pathways analysis, was to include the assumptions updates as well. So that sounds good to me.
Great. So if everyone's comfortable, we'll just add in that list from the document that was shared with you all in January. I think that would be perfect. Okay. I wish I grabbed that earlier. Sorry about that. And then the final thing I wanted to look at is with Leslie Ann's graphic. If there's something more we want to do with that in this document, I just wasn't sure exactly what to do with it in terms of translating it into this guidance document.
David, before we go there, I'm just wondering, there have been a couple of just minor like copied editing suggestions in the notes that I don't know if have been captured, and I wonder if it's worth pausing just to capture those.
Yep. So one I saw was the a typo on allocated. I just fixed that while we were talking.
And then Kelly just noticed that there was
two analyses. Yeah, I just deleted one of those. Thank you for both of those. Yep.
Great.
And there's some capitalization question marks for me as well. Like, what's capitalized here? So okay. Thank you for those good catches. Yeah, so we have this really interesting graphic that Leslie Ann's found helpful. Oh, sorry, Liz, you're about to say something?
Well, so I looked at it over the weekend when it was posted. We used this in the last climate action plan. So if we are going to incorporate it, I think it would just be a reference back to remembering to, approach the analysis in a framework that does no harm. See figure 1B from the initial climate action plan. That's my suggestion.
Nice. And can you imagine, Liz, that sort of, we kind of end the document with that to say, you know, or would you put it somewhere else?
Yeah, it could actually go up front too. I mean, I don't think there's a need to actually incorporate it directly into the document, I guess, one way or the other.
Oh, nice. Okay, so
Given that we've used it before, I think it would just be a reference. I guess I was thinking it would be up front, but I hadn't gone so far as to figure out where in the document to reference it.
okay.
But that's just my opinion, so we can hear from others, of course.
I could imagine putting it in as others are thinking about this. I could imagine putting in a sentence here as we get, particularly in the substantive areas of focus, where we say something around a do no harm framework, as you know, as you said, Liz, like in reference the graphic and the
Yeah, as described in the initial climate action plan. It was
Right.
right in the intro. It was basically, I think it was like section 1, maybe page 1. Yeah, it was literally the first paragraph of the plan.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And maybe even link right to the document. Super. Okay. Great. Anything else folks want to say before we finish up on this conversation? Any of these other edits folks would feel, or there's something missing that you really felt was a strong conversation on Monday last week that is not showing up here?
Thank you for incorporating these. I know it's a difficult task and process to hear lots of feedback and translate that, but I think that this is an improved document. So thanks for the work on it and the discussion today.
Thanks, Jared. Appreciate that. Jane?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that I put this in the chat, but maybe for a future steering committee meeting, David, myself, and staff in the Climate Action Office did meet to sort of map out a proposal for engagement for the Climate Action Plan, understanding that there's a lot of engagement happening within our office, and thinking that the CAP and the resilience implementation strategy would sort of be the two overarching themes over the next 18 months, driving sort of the messaging and public engagement meetings that we are doing, and thinking about how other things fit into those two things. Sophie Veltrop's working on a Gantt chart, actually. I wish Julie was here for her to hear me say Gantt chart because she loves them, but trying to map out sort of how engagement fits in and the timing for different things around the 3 buckets: public meetings, focus groups, and meeting people where they are. And so I think that's something that should be shared with the steering committee probably at the next meeting, because we are thinking and envisioning some kickoff sort of engagement for the CAP, and then specific focus group capacity for subcommittees this fall that can be worked into the guidance document, so subcommittees know the capacity that we have to support that.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. So if folks are comfortable with this document, I'll just one last go at this. Any other changes? Again, the things that'll happen between what was just on the screen and this getting sent is we'll just list out those technical reports as they're listed out in our January thing from the Climate Action Office. And then I'll add that sentence making reference to the do no harm sort of framework, as I showed there. I can't write it in real time fast enough. Those are the 2 things that'll happen. Anything else we want to do on this document before it gets sent off to subcommittees? Okay, super. Thanks so much. Really helpful. So this brings us to the next agenda item, which was your priorities for the next period of time, next couple months leading up into the next council meeting. And I just would love to hear some thoughts from you all about what is it you think you should be doing between now and then, how frequently you'd like to meet. We're typically on a monthly rhythm. But I just want to open up that space. I feel like there's things to do, like getting these guidance documents going and some other things like that, where you clearly have a role. But I'd love to hear from you all. What would you like to be doing? Graham?
Is it possible or appropriate for us in the context of providing the subcommittees with as much support as possible so that they can be as successful as possible in their work leading to the revision of the cap, to provide more specific recommendations to each subcommittee of the areas, the kind of priority areas for revision or addition / filling in of things that weren't covered the first time?
Potentially. Yeah. And just as, just a quick jump in there, Bram, maybe it's that sort of substantive guidance, or maybe it's making progress on some of these sort of guidance documents that are flagged in this, or missing guidance documents that are flagged in the thing we just looked at, right? So more process, maybe less substance, perhaps. I don't know. Jared?
Thanks. Yeah, I was thinking similarly, but a little bit in reverse, rather than kind of guidance from the steering committee to the subcommittees, having a process where the steering committee can hear from subcommittees what their kind of timelines, meeting topics, priorities are, because I feel like one of the valuable things the steering committee can do is kind of have this overall picture of what's happening across the subcommittees and how they fit together. And I feel like, we've broadly set up this process where there's going to be a lot of work in the subcommittees over the coming months. And then later in the year, it's going to transition to more of the council. And I feel like early in this process, we can help play a role of requesting from the subcommittees, what are your, when are you holding meetings? What are the priorities for those meetings, so that we know if there's overlapping topics or cross-cutting themes. So it's not all on like one or two liaisons, just so that we can be doing a little bit of kind of helping with communication and coordination to have a more confident sense that things are going to come together within the overall kind of framework and timeline that we've suggested.
Thanks,
And,
Jared.
add that my question was motivated by the fact that on cross sector, it's very clear. We know exactly that the top priority is figuring out an approach to transportation. And I don't know if it is that clear what the top priority is for the other subcommittees. And if they know, then Jared's absolutely right. It would be wonderful to hear from them if they have more clarity. And if they don't, then maybe we and they work together to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Bram. Kelly?
Yeah, I think both of those, both what Bram said and what Jared said are on point. And I was going to say something very similar to what Jared said. And the only thing to add that I would add is I have a feeling that we're going to need to be more involved on making sure that those cross-cutting things get dealt with. And not that we need to deal with them, but I think we need to be supporting the proper groups getting together to work those out. So I would probably add that.
In terms of operationalizing all this that you're talking about, one way to do this would be to host in a meeting like this subcommittee co-chairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you all have a conversation with them about exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So that's one way to do it, is you invite co-chairs into a meeting every once in a while, like, maybe in May or something, or in April and May, if they're getting going.
I think that makes sense. I think that the one of the risks we would run if we don't do that is it's just such a long time between council meetings. I think the next one's not until June 17th. So just to make sure that things are kind of unfolding on track in terms of the background discussions and analysis that need to be being advanced so that they're ready to be lifted up. I would support that, hosting a meeting of co-chairs in, say, early May. And then we can, hear what the timelines and the priorities for each subcommittee are and how they might fit together.
That sound good to everybody? Okay. Great. Are there other things you want to make sure you're paying attention to in the coming months? That seems like a pretty important one. There's the usual work you have of planning the meetings, like the council meeting. So there's the sort of agenda setting conversation. Anything else that's sort of on your minds that you want to make sure is shared right now? Okay. Okay, great. Then nominations. You'll see, Jane, can you help me out here? You'll see the new nominations. This reflects the new science and data. Help me out, Jane. I'll share.
Oh, I started sharing already.
Oh yeah. Yes, thank you. Yes.
So just a reminder, science and data, Jared, you can obviously speak to this, but hadn't been able to meet the deadline at the last meeting because they were still trying to actually make contact and speak to some nominees who had interest in multiple subcommittees. And so they've put forward 2 recommendations here, Breck Bowden and Madison. Wow,
Shropshire.
And thank you, Jared. That was hard. And I have a hard last name too. So, and then the other subcommittees all put forward youth nominees. Again, this is a legacy of Iris. We worked closely with Veep in order to solicit new members, and Veep asked for some more time. And so now we understand that all subcommittees, maybe except science and data, Jared, have youth nominees, and Ag and Eco also has Lily, the council member. So there's a nice network of youth, and then also being supported behind the scenes by Veep, so that folks come together and talk about it as a learning experience across the council work. So these are all the new members, and with this approval, sort of the Climate Action Office role of supporting a robust effort to fully staff the subcommittees is sort of done. And the subcommittee should be up and running, and I believe all will start to meet either science and data at the end of this week, and then the rest of them across the next few weeks in April to kick off with the guidance document that you all have just finished preparing.
Hey, Jane, just quickly on my version of this, there's 3 names under science and data. Is that the same under your version? Yours is 2.
No, I only see 2. And I that's what I understood it only to be 2. I'm not sure what you're looking at. Unless there's a youth nominee now for, okay.
I just clicked through what's online. That's all.
This is the one online for me. That's what I'm working off of. That's really funny.
Okay, then. I don't know what to say.
To-
All right.
Just to
Whatever you're
confirm.
showing.
Jared can confirm.
Yeah, the two of the names we considered, the 2 that Colin and I as co-chairs put forward were Madison Shropshire and William Breck Bowden. So those should be the only 2 moving forward at this point.
Great. Okay. So your job is just to, as a steering committee, to formally say, yes, great, continue on. Or if there's anything you need to say about it, this is a good time to say it. Any concerns about that?
Yes, great. Continue on.
Thanks, Bram. Perfect.
Same.
Great. Yeah. And thanks, Kelly, for solving my mystery there. Yeah. So the one linked in the agenda is the correct one. Okay. Fabulous. I'm not sure we have folks of the public with us today, but this is a time when if anyone who's been listening to our conversation who's not a steering committee member or would like to weigh in, this is a great time to do that. Okay. Not hearing that, folks. Great. So we solved the issue on the guidance document for now. That's great. We'll send that out with those changes. We took note.
Oh.
Yep. Yep. Sorry,
think-
Jerry.
I think what may have happened, this may have been the 2 versus 3 names. It may have been a holdover from before where there was a change in the staff support from the Department of Health because Jared Ulmer was moving over to the Rural Resilience, and there was
Yeah.
a staff person from the Department of Health who was going to be in a staff support role for science and data. But we approved that at the last meeting, is my recollection.
Good. Okay, good. Thank you for, I was like scratching my head and now you're right. That is what it is. With Dr. Levine as a counselor now, there was a request to switch around representation of staff. So all set.
Super. Bag blast clear. Okay, great. We approved our nominations and we have some vision of what we want, what you all as a steering committee want to do. In particular, you want to convene subcommittee members and have a conversation that feels like a unifying, looking at the whole picture kind of conversation with them to see how things are coming together. Great. Any last things before we sign off? Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Have a good Monday. Have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll
Bye-bye.
be in touch.
Thanks, guys.
everybody.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.